I'll now call this regular meeting of council to order. If everybody could please rise for the national anthem. I'll now ask if there are any disclosures of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Okay, seeing none. We don't have any presentations this evening, but we do have one public hearing. So we'll move right into that, and it is an application for rezoning file Z04-2015, 11274 Golf Course Road, part of Lot 12, Concession 1, Wayne and Sandra Kozar and Jamie Edling, agent. So the purpose of the meeting, held pursuant to Section 34 of the Planning Act, is to provide information respecting an application for rezoning submitted to the township by Wayne and Sandra Kozar to amend the zoning on a property on the west side of Golf Course Road and south of Highway number 3 and known municipally as 11274 Golf Course Road. So I will now hand it over to our planner.
Thank you, Your Worship. The proposed amendment is needed to comply with township, regional, and provincial policies regarding the disposal of surplus farm dwellings. The retaining croplands need to be rezoned for agricultural purposes only, which would prohibit the construction of a dwelling going into the future. The property is subject to an application for consent to sever, which was heard and granted by the Committee of Adjustment yesterday. So as an explanation of this, I'll paraphrase Section 3414. Council shall ensure that enough information is made available to the public regarding the power of the OMB to dismiss an appeal. If an appellant has not provided the council with an oral submission at a public meeting or written submissions before the bylaw is passed. So if we receive application or if we receive comments prior to the bylaw being passed, they're to be considered. With respect to the application, it's on the screen and behind you, and there's two parts to the property. Part 1, which is 1.15 hectares in the bottom right-hand corner of the survey, is that's the land subject to severance as a surplus farm dwelling. It's fronting on Golf Course Road, and the proposal with the rezoning is to exempt it from MDS requirements. MDS being minimum distance separation, which is the distance. This is considered new development or development by the province. Even though there's a house still there, so therefore we have to comply with MDS requirements, distance from livestock. Part number 2, 11.254 hectares, is to be rezoned agricultural A1 special, which is agricultural purposes only, and it will also recognize a reduced lot size of 11.25 hectares, where 40 hectares is required to be a farm lot. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from members of council? Alderman Hassels.
I see it's 40 hectares is required. I thought that was 40 acres before. Has things changed?
Your Worship, through Alderman Hassels, the official plan says 40 hectares or 99 acres.
Okay, any other questions from council members? Okay, anybody in the gallery with any questions or comments? None of the 4 people here wish to comment? Okay, so I'll hand it back over to the planner for next steps.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to cover also the agency comments. The Region of Niagara Development Services has requested that Part 2 be rezoned for agricultural purposes only, which I mentioned already, so that's included. And the Township Septic Inspection Department asked for a septic inspection of the of Part 1 to ensure that it can be properly serviced. That was addressed as part of the consent file. So the next steps here were, I'll come back to council with a report to a subsequent council meeting, providing a report on the application and a recommendation to the council regarding the rezoning. And at that meeting, council may approve the rezoning affecting the property. A notice will then, should council pass the bylaw, a notice will be sent out. And that notice under section 34 will provide the reasons for the decision by council and provide a 20-day appeal period. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So in closing, should any individual want to be informed of when the staff report will be presented to council or want to be ensured that notice of passage of the rezoning will be sent to them, they should inform the clerk in writing, which can be done following this meeting. So that concludes our public meeting, and now we will move into delegations. And tonight we have one delegation. We have Mr. Patrick Goodale from QPA Solar Incorporated regarding municipal support for solar projects. So Patrick, if you just want to head up to the podium, and there's a little button there. Yep, you've got it.
Can everyone hear me okay? I am Patrick Goodale and QPA Solar. I am the manager of both contract and co-op administration there. So to start off, so to introduce QPA Solar, we are a full solar project development and EPC. That means that we do project development, engineering, construction, operations, and maintenance. We do the whole gamut when it comes to solar, both ground and rooftop. However, the one point worth mentioning is we are exclusively a solar project developer company. We have no interest in getting into wind. Solar is where we've made our money. Solar is where we will continue to be. Next. To look at some of the sample clients that we've dealt with in the past, we do have a variety of clients, including both school boards in Upper Grand and Hamilton Wentworth. As well, we do have a proven track record of working with municipalities. You do look at, there are 4 municipalities listed there. We are currently installing 37 solar small-scale Fit 3 projects, and we do anticipate applying for over 75 during the Fit 4 window, which is fast approaching. Of these 37 projects, they are spread throughout Southern Ontario. As I mentioned, that we have worked with both Middlesex County as well as Hamilton. Since we are based out of Hamilton, Ontario, it is our home base. But we also do have projects up in Owen Sound as well as in Mississauga. Recently, we entered into a business partnership with Waterford Group, the aggregate developer that has, among other sites, a site on Highway 3 in town here. We plan to install small-scale Fit-for solar projects on the various properties, not just in Wainfleet, but as well as Norfolk County as another example. So at this point, I think it is worth mentioning that I did say that we are a small-scale solar developer and solar exclusively. So when I say small-scale, we're looking at our projects are typically no more than 2.5 acres for ground mounts, and they're typically about 500 kilowatt system. Looking at it, there are no moving parts, there is no noise associated with it, and our project specifically when it comes to the Waterford properties, we're looking at no more than 5 to 6 feet high. We are also committing that the people, residents, individuals, will not see these projects. We have made it abundantly clear when we've done previous projects, individuals, municipalities have expressed concern about individuals seeing these projects. If that is a concern, then we do put that into our design process. So So if you were to compare that to wind, you're looking at wind is large scale, a lot higher, up to 350 feet high, as well as generates noise and shadows, and people can see from long distances. So to look at what we're talking about, we're looking at a total of 8 4 projects for the Waterford group that we're looking to submit. All said that they range in size from 0.9 to 2.5 acres in size. In addition, we have made it abundantly clear right from the get-go that we do want to make sure that our projects are not on prime agricultural land. That we have looked at the idea of each of these properties, save for the last one, property 9 identified on this slide, all of them are on class 4 to 7 land. When it comes to property 9, however, we did discover that there was some prime agricultural land, so there is some flexibility. It's not an all or none proposition. So to get a better idea, this slide right here does identify the various projects. Sorry. Just wanted to go back and just Thanks. This does identify the projects. It is bordered by Erie Peak Road. It is essentially the quarry and the quarry alone. There are no projects that will be off the quarry site. So with that in mind, you can look at the top right. There is the aforementioned property 9, which is just one of the 8 projects that we would be going ahead with. But there is some flexibility there, whether or not the council is really receptive to us going ahead with such projects. Okay, next slide, please. And then looking at this one, this is just a draft 3D layout that we did develop for one of the properties, on property 8. Again, in looking at property 8, we did make abundantly clear, even when we were doing the draft layout, that it would not be seen by residents. It was also going to be watched by many trees, and we made sure that we were not going to be cutting down any trees. There's not going to be any tree destruction associated with the building of these projects. So what I'm here today, or tonight for, is we do have the 8 projects on Waterford Group properties, exclusively on Waterford Group, and it is ground mount and ground mount alone. We are looking for municipal endorsement, and we are looking for land use exemption. Preferably, we would like to have these by September 18th, as the FIT window is fast approaching. The FIT window does open for us on September 30th, and we do anticipate getting the projects in very close to application open time. The endorsement, while it is not necessary, it does provide 2 application bonus points, as it were. We feel that it's better to have a good community relationship, and it's better to have council support than not. And we have had cases whereby we've worked with municipalities in the past, and we look forward to working, hopefully, with Wainfleet. That's it for my presentation, and that's my contact information, as well as the president of the company has contact information as well.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. Are there any questions from council members to the presenter? Alderman Conk.
Madam Mayor, thank you for that presentation. However, you didn't mention in your presentation what any of the direct benefits to either the residents in Wainfleet or Wainfleet as a whole will be.
Yeah, that's a very valid point. Our feeling is that we look at our projects do create multiple spin-offs. We do pride ourselves in being a local company out of Hamilton. For our Hamilton projects, we have hired Hamilton electricians. For our projects out of Middlesex, we have hired Middlesex electricians. We do look to hire local when we do our projects. So that's one of our other criteria as well.
So that's it?
And that would be the main one that I would like to touch on next.
You also didn't mention in your presentation what goes into making up a solar panel.
In terms of, could you clarify your question, please?
There are many, many rare earth minerals that make up a solar panel, and they're difficult to get rid of when the panel comes to the end of its life cycle. So my point is, what happens to these solar panels when they expire?
We look at doing normal decommissioning practices as other projects have a past knowledge of. This isn't the first project that's being done, so it's a question of following the decommissioning practices as outlined by the Ministry of Environment.
And those would be?
I don't know those offhand. I could look those up and go from there, but right now I don't have those on me offhand.
I've got a few more questions. So you also don't mention the what solar has to do with global adjustment on our hydro bills.
Okay. Could you clarify that? To your point?
Well, the point is, I asked you, my first question was, what are the direct benefits for the residents or the township as a whole? And all you could give us was that you're going to hire outside help, which means to me that nobody in the township, and I know this to be true, it's the same with wind, not one of us are going to get any hydro from any of these installations. We're not going to get hydro directly to our homes, it's not going to lower our hydro bills, and it's going to add to the global adjustment, which is part of our hydro bill. A global adjustment, if you don't know, is the difference between the total payments made to certain contracted or regulated generators, which is what you would be, and demand management and conservation programs and any offsetting market revenues. So in essence, on our hydro bills, for both wind and solar, solar maybe not so much at this point, but we're being gouged twice on our hydro bills, and the global adjustment is a large part of that picture. You also didn't point out that currently, it doesn't matter what time of the day or what time of the year that you look at the IESO site, that solar only generates about 0.3% of the actual demand for hydro. So in essence, solar isn't needed. We know that. Wind's not needed either. We have a surplus of energy at this point. So again, what is going to be the direct benefit to the residents in the township?
I would argue that the employment benefit is a significant and a large one. We could argue whether or not the global adjustment and the challenges related to having solar be part of the demand mix make sense currently. But as you are well aware, it is a 20-year contract. Solar it's not going to necessarily be a large part of the pie right now, but it will at some point. We will need this supply online.
Okay, any other questions or comments from council members? I just had a quick question. I believe from looking at the maps and talking to staff about this during the week that you're fairly close to the Wainfleet wetlands or in that area. So I'm assuming you know whether you're within buffer zone.
We are aware of the wetlands and we are putting in proper precautions. As one example, the ESR, the Environmental Screening Report, requires that we be 30 meters away. We are committing to at least 100 meters away from those wetlands.
Okay. All right, any other questions then from council members? Okay, seeing none, thank you for the presentation, and we'll move into business arising from delegations. I don't know if anybody has any business arising, or if Alderman Hassels? Well, I've been with you for 5 years, I know when you're getting ready to.
In the past, we haven't supported it. If we did support this, I think we open ourselves up to supporting other ones that might be on prime agricultural land. And since they don't really need our support, I would say that because we had one gentleman come in before we didn't support it. So I think to be fair to everybody, it would probably be best if we did not support this either.
Okay, so I think I've spoken to the clerk. I think we can just, if someone wants to make a motion just to receive the presentation for information then, because I know I think we already dealt with this in a piece of correspondence at the last council meeting. So, so if someone wants to make that motion just to receive it, Alderman Hassels, Alderman Dykstra. I'll call the question then on just receiving the presentation. All those in favor? And that's carried. Okay, so now we will move into my mayor's remarks, and they aren't super long. So I attended the Marshville Heritage Festival last Saturday, and it was definitely warm. But I haven't heard much feedback, but people were still coming in droves. I was there right at 10 to start on the Saturday morning, and they were steady all day long. I was done around 2, and people still coming in. So it looked like the heat didn't put a damper on it by any means. So we were glad that it looks like they had a very successful weekend. Just the other day, I met with Bob Sagan from the region, and he was talking about the possibility for broadband internet in the rural areas of Niagara, that there's something going on with the federal and provincial government. It's kind of on hold now because of the election, but looking to bring broadband in. But in speaking to a constituent before the meeting, I was reminded that Bell has been in the area putting in, I don't understand it completely, but fiber optic lines, yeah. So I'm not sure if it's the same thing, but the region is, going to keep us apprised of that. So I don't know if what Bell's doing is just in the Lakeshore area, if it's across the township. But regardless, we're seeing some movement on increasing the speed of our internet access, which is good, especially because I know we want to promote our small businesses, existing businesses in the region. So we definitely want them to have what they need to be successful. Tomorrow morning, I will be attending the United Way 2015 campaign kickoff breakfast at Sparrow Lakes. And Tamara's been in church for the last couple of years, and she came in to talk to me, or she called me a couple weeks ago, and we talked about different ways that the township could help with the campaign. And I know we struggle with that with different fundraisers. So I had gone to the breakfast in the past, so I wanted to make sure I'd be there. But if we can put our thinking caps on, and maybe this year for Halloween we can donate to them. I know we donate to Big Brothers Big Sisters, which is under their umbrella. So we could continue to do that and think of other things to do. So I'll leave that with everybody. But regardless, I will be there tomorrow for their kickoff. The Conservation Authority next board meeting is tomorrow night. And I think you've heard us talk about having Long Beach designated a blue flag beach. And Alderman Conk and I at AMO last year spoke to one of the ladies from that organization. I brought it to the MPCA, staff wasn't overly interested. Mayor Diodati, who loves our beaches, saw them at AMO this year and said, "You need to do this." And I said, "I've already tried." So we do have them coming for a presentation tomorrow night. And I'm hoping that will put some sort of motion forward that it'll pass, that we can have staff start working on that. So I think they need so many years of water testing, like quality studies, so it wouldn't just happen overnight. I think we'd be a couple years out before we knew, but it's a very prestigious designation. If you go on their website, like there's several beaches, I think across Canada, but if we could get one of our beaches in Wainfleet, that designation, that would be really big. So we're getting the ball rolling on that, so I wanted to let council know. This coming Saturday, I will be participating in the Niagara Wine Festival Grape Stomp to stomp out poverty. This coming Friday is the last day to bring in non-perishable food donations to the township. So I'm supporting the Wainfleet Firefighters Christmas Basket Program. We already have quite a bit of food. I thank council members and staff who have brought items in already, and I've put quite a bit on Facebook, so I see people responding. So I'm hoping by the end of the week that we'll have quite a bit. I'm really nervous about the whole stomping the grape thing, because I have no idea how to. Robin suggested I YouTube it later, so I'll have to figure out my strategy. But I commend Mayor Senzik for kind of putting this different spin on it and making it, so that we can help address poverty in the region, because that's a big thing. It's a big thing that the media has been pushing over the last few years, and especially in the last election, it came up a lot region-wide. So I think it's a great thing, and I'm excited to be part of it. Next Thursday morning, the 24th, we're going to have our first, I guess we're calling it South Niagara Mayor's meeting regarding the Welland Hospital. So I'm going to be attending that with Mayor Maloney and Mayor Campion, and I'm not sure who else, but we're going to be discussing kind of where we're at with that next Thursday, so I can report back to everybody on that. And so next Thursday also kicks off the fall fair with the annual parade. I'll get back to that in a minute. And so they have school visits on the Friday, the tractor pull. Saturday morning, they have the pancake breakfast. I'm not sure if everybody received their email about volunteering. Usually council members and other politicians, we go, you didn't? Okay, I got one. Because usually Ted's in the back cooking. Betty and I are in the front. Terry's never been there. Richard's usually doing the Iron Farmer, so he can't. So yeah, that's 9 o'clock Saturday morning, and I don't know, because we're kind of in that riding shift, that riding boundary shift, I don't know, Malcolm's always been really good and he's come and participated, but I don't know if it'll be Dean. I have no idea who's gonna show up, so it should be interesting. But all the proceeds, I think, go back to the fair for the pancake breakfast. I can't remember, but yeah, so Ted makes a mean pancake, so I invite everybody to join us if you're even gonna be there. So that day also we have the Iron Farmer competition, which is growing in popularity, and then we also have the Demolition Derby. And so the parade, we've changed the theme a little bit. The theme is, the fair theme this year is horses, so Alderman Conk suggested we stick with that, so we can discuss it later. I still don't know who's going to participate, but Alderman Conk had some ideas and I've been kind of spinning it around too, so I think we can still put in a good entry in the parade. On the 30th of September, the regional chair, Al Caslin, I think he's doing a tour of the municipalities in the region, so he's coming out to meet with myself and Robin and just discuss issues in the township. I might take him for a little drive and just show him, you know, some of our roads, bridges, all that kind of stuff. I think he's fairly familiar with the municipality, but we'll kind of put our heads together, Robin, and kind of have a list of things we want to share with him. So we're looking forward to hosting him here that day. The next regional council meeting is October 1st, and our next council meeting is October 6th, and I made a big deal about it because it's my birthday, but then I found out that it's also Richard Mann's birthday that day as well, but I don't know if he's going to be here, so the cake can just have my name on it. Okay, so that's it for my mayor's remarks. So now we will go into the adoption of the minutes.
That the minutes of the regular meeting of council held on August 25th, 2015 be adopted as circulated.
Mover and a seconder for the minutes, Alderman Gilmore and Alderman Conk. Any discrepancies or errors with the minutes that anybody saw? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that's carried. And now we'll go into our first staff report.
The planning staff report 21 of 2015 regarding the listing of the holding symbol of 20227 Youngs Road South and the recommendations contained therein be adopted as circulated.
Mover and a seconder, Alderman Gilmore and Alderman Dykstra. Michael, do you want to maybe give a little blurb? I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but just kind of for the benefit of people in the gallery and now our viewers.
Certainly, Your Worship, through all of council, a holding zone is used when the base zone, in this case agricultural, can't be, the permitted uses can't be put down there. A holding zone is used as a conditional zoning of sorts. So in this case, what happened was the property owner, I believe back in 2005, 2006-ish, applied for rezoning to residential, was granted it, but also applied for permission to build a workshop, a garage without a principal dwelling, without a principal house on the property. And so at that time, the recommendation was made and a bylaw adopted to put a holding zone on it, or a holding symbol on that. And that ensured that the property owner could do nothing else with the property until such time as he submitted an application for a building permit for a house. So the property, since my time at the township, the property has changed hands, and the new owners have approached the township and have actually submitted the building permit, and they have satisfied, from staff's perspective, they've satisfied conditions of the holding zone. And so now the request is to remove the holding symbol from the property to allow them to go ahead and build. And that requires this bylaw from the council.
Okay, Okay, so any questions, Alderman Dykstra?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Michael, you did confirm that they did submit a building permit, or?
Your worship, through Alderman Dykstra, yes, they did submit a building permit. They also have sign off from the MPCA.
Just clarify, I thought with a holding zone, you can't even apply for a permit until it's been lifted. Is that not correct?
Your worship, through Alderman Dykstra, they have to show intent. So they have submitted an application. I've talked to John, our chief building official, who will be holding off on the permit until such time as the appeal period for this bylaw, should council approve it, until that appeal period passes.
So then, just on to continue from that, if council chooses to lift it, then the applicant's building permit is then valid?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, any other questions or comments from council members? Okay, seeing none, so the recommendation is to be received and approve the attached bylaw and waive section 15.7 of the procedural bylaw, so we can pass the bylaw that's attached. Okay, so if there aren't any other questions or comments, I will call the question. All those in favor? And that's carried.
Administrative Staff Report 24 of 2015 regarding the 2014 Auditor's Report and the 2014 Draft Financial Report, and the recommendations contained therein be adopted as circulated.
Mover and a seconder for that report. Alderman Conk and Alderman Hessels. Robin, did you want to give us a brief little spiel?
Your worship, to all of council. The attachments to this is the 2014 Auditor's Report and the draft financial report. The first communication of audit results is a report to council, and it just states that they found no issues, no material misstatement, no material journal entries that they had to make. The second letter is the internal control deficiency letter. Nothing new has been noted in this letter. Being the small organization we are, we tend to have some, because we can't segregate duties as well as we would love to do, so we watch everything by supervision. So, you know, because we can't have just a cashier, we can't have just, so we do come on duty, so that letter is always the same every year. And then, of course, the final report is the draft financial report. The financial statements are prepared according to PSAB, which is different than our budgeting. Our budgeting is done on a cash basis. The statements are prepared on an accrual basis. The major differences are in our budget, transfers to reserve are considered an expense, whereas here they're part of the surplus. Capital expenditures are capitalized in the statement. Our budget shows them as cash expenses. And we have depreciation in our audit report. Those are the big differences between the two. And under the new reporting requirements, council has to approve the draft statements before they can finalize their statements.
Okay, any questions from council members? Alderman Hessels.
With the deficiencies there, you say you can't do nothing, but it kind of recommends that you do something, and I believe, I don't know how the protocol works now, but if we go through the list, we shouldn't have the same people signing off on all the same things. Like if the person, the way I take it, if the person orders it, he shouldn't be writing a check or receiving it. You gotta have other people in there so you can do your checks and balances. So I see that being an issue. I think it's been an issue before and we've had concerns about it, so.
Through your worship, to Alderman Hessels, the things you are saying we do. So Public Works will order it, Public Works will approve it. It comes over to myself or the Deputy Treasurer to input and actually pay it. At that point, we make sure that it fits in with the budget. We do complain to the guys or if we question it. The things that they're talking about, which we've tried to do, is keep the Deputy Treasurer and myself not touching the cash. So we try that the girls up front are the only ones that do the cashiering and we don't. The CAO, not right at this moment, but the CAO would also go in and check all our main accounts just visually and then ask us questions about them so that you know, the CAO never touches the cash, never touches the GL. He had no, he couldn't go into the GL and do any transactions. All he could do is look at our accounts and then question us on them. So we've tried, we make other controls. Because otherwise, we could hire 4 more people.
Well, I'm just looking at this, and it says, initiate transactions, author, this is what the same person shouldn't be doing, initiate transaction, authorizing, record, verify, report, and have. So even in public works, it shouldn't be the one person doing everything, you have to have, what I understand from this, different people signing off on it, so that things don't get lost, or that you find problems before they actually happen. So, and I don't know, that's kind of what I see out of this, they're recommending that you do that, and it sounds like it hasn't been done as of this letter. Last year, June 2nd, they said they recommended it, and it still hasn't been done.
Your worship, to Alderman Hessels, I think if you look at it individually, one at the end, it says supervision acts as a compensating control. In some cases, because of the size of our organization, complete segregation is not possible. So I'm going to look at like a normal transaction. Jeremy at the arena may order supplies for the arena. The invoice actually comes here. And then we look at it and we send it over to Public Works. And then Richard or Ron will look at it, approve it, or talk to Jeremy. Then it comes back over here, so we actually pay for it. So everyone's controlling each other's expenditures. So if I found you know, a delivery not to the arena and it was being expensed to the arena, I would question it. So we do compensate by supervision.
Okay, any other questions from council members? Okay, seeing none, so recommendations are to receive, receive again, receive, so and that we approve it. Yeah, so receive, and approve. Okay, so I will call the question on that recommendation. All those in favor, and that's carried.
Public Works Staff Report 19 of 2015 regarding the municipal buildings condition assessment and the recommendations contained therein be adopted as circulated.
Mover and a seconder, Alderman Gilmore, Alderman Hassels. Richard, do you want to do a little rundown on this very, very lengthy report that we have in front of us tonight?
Your worship, sorry, I'll try and make it so you can try and understand me anyway. Through your worship, the rest of council, this was requested after we had the audit done on the arena building. So we had the company come back in and do the same basic full assessment on the rest of the buildings, including the fire halls, everything basically that the town owned and has assets to. It is a fairly lengthy report, and it would probably take a good person probably 3 or 4 times reading it to figure it all out. I've had the opportunity to read it 3 times. I still find little things in it, but it's not as overwhelming as I thought it might have been. Yeah, there are things that we need to do, and there are things that we should have been doing all along and haven't been doing as far as maintenance. There are things that we can definitely upgrade, and we've already started doing some of the items that we did find in that report. It gives us a basis to go for budgeting and for maintenance purposes. I think what we're going to do is we're going to start looking at things on a broader scale instead of, I think basically what's happened in the past years, if we get a problem and got a complaint, well then we'll go fix it. And if we don't get a complaint, we're not going to fix it. So we're going to be doing more of a strategic maintenance program that's already being set up on a computer system that we'll be able to track it year round. IT department has set up a maintenance schedule on the computer now, so any complaints that come in, we can start doing them on an annual basis, regular maintenance for for a lot of things, including like the water softeners and the septic tanks to have reviewed, as well as the eave troughs, twice a year at least, to clean eave troughs. So we'll be putting that into the calendar, so it'll get reminders that'll come up to the various employees to have things done. Yeah, it may be overwhelming if you look at the dollar figure for a lot of these things, but I think if we strategically go after it in a lengthy period of time, some of it can be done under capital, some of it will be done under regular maintenance, and we'll be reviewing most of that through the budget process.
Okay, any questions from council members? Wow, okay. All right, seeing none, so this is just to receive for information, and we can all put it beside our bed and review it at night over the next couple weeks. So I will call the question. All those in favor? And that's carried.
The Fire Staff Report 4 of 2015 regarding the Emergency Mutual Assistance Agreement and the recommendations contained therein be adopted as circulated.
Mover and a seconder for this report, Alderman Conk, Alderman Dykstra. So we don't have the chief here tonight. Does anybody have any questions? It's my understanding that this was something, and I do vaguely remember that they wanted to implement in the last term of council, and it didn't really gain any traction, so they're revisiting it again and trying to get all the municipalities to sign off on it. So basically, if we had something disastrous happen, we know where we stand after with who pays for what and who gets called out to what. And I kind of compared it to the incident with the meth lab. That's not necessarily what they're talking about here, but there was a question of payment and some discrepancies with that after the fact. So I think this is trying to address that so that we don't run across those issues when we, if we had to call for mutual aid in a really unforeseen circumstance. So that was the way it was explained to us, so I don't know if anybody has any questions then. Alderman Hessels?
No, I thought we did have a thing like called mutual aid that we call them in any ways now, so I don't know, maybe this is just confirm it, but I know that's always been in place.
I think this is for the whole municipality and it's related to catastrophic events, but Robin, did you want to comment further on that?
Your Worship, to Alderman Hessels, I don't think it's fire specific. It's mutual aid, which normally be fire. We think of fire, but I think it can be other trucks and things, people. Maybe we need people power, and it does say in here that the agreements are non-binding, so the township would in no way be obligated to provide assistance if requested. So if Port Colborne asked us and we weren't able to do it, we weren't bound to offer them some of our equipment, but it does help us say what we charge them for, what they charge us for. It covers things like food and lodging, information sharing, etc. So I think it's just to cover everybody's basis on, if someone asks us, they also know they will get billed.
Okay, any other questions from council members or staff? No? Okay. All right, so this was just this was more than that. So receive for information and authorize the CAO, an emergency mutual assistance agreement between the township and the region, and the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute a non-binding mutual assistance agreement in all ancillary documents. So, if everybody's good with that, I will call the question. All those in favor? And that's carried. And now we're going into correspondence.
The report of the correspondence to council dated September 15th, 2015, and the recommendations contained therein be adopted as circulated.
Mover and a seconder for correspondence, Alderman Dykstra, Alderman Conk. So we've got, I think, a couple that we have to deal with, but I'm just going to point out really quickly 168 and 173. These individuals, it's been kind of quieter now, but they had contacted Richard, Nan, and I several times in the last few weeks with the truck traffic in terms of the building going on regarding the turbines. So I had asked them to document their concerns and forward them along to us as we go. So we had them put them on correspondence, but we're always saying that we should document these things I know we've talked about different things related to the turbines, so that's where they had come from. So we were trying to help them as best we could we made some phone calls. Alderman Conk.
Through you, Madam Mayor, just in case anybody is interested, there is a meeting with regards to complaints to their public liaison committee next Monday at Wellandport Community Center. So if anybody's interested in going up and complaining, getting in their faces, that's where you go.
And Alderman Dykstra, you had a question or comment?
Well, through you, Madam Mayor, regarding the same issue regarding the dust on Side Road 42, is there, if we have any extra costs over and above, like with dust control or anything like that, could it not be downloaded on the elements of the windmill?
I'll defer that to Richard, and maybe that has something to do with the committee that you're part of at the region.
Yeah, through your worship, to Alderman Dykstra, there is a committee that we've set up with the various municipalities involved or being affected by the wind corporation, and the region as well, because they are also getting affected on their roads. We have, and our agreement that we've signed, the road use agreement, also allows us to go back after them for certain things. Not all road use agreements were made the same. Ours is quite well done. So to answer your question, yes, I can have things done and bill them for it, and I already have. If I'm not happy with the results or the response from them, I'm getting it taken care of, and then I'm sending them the bill. So some of the other municipalities don't have quite the same wording in their road use agreement, so they're having a harder time with it. The hard part is when damages or when issues arise because of the Niagara Wind Corporation, once you start getting involved, you start taking ownership of the project, and you don't want to do that because then the liability falls back on the municipality. So we're trying our best to put the onus on them to make sure that all these issues are resolved, and that's why, like the mayor said, we're trying to get everybody to express their opinions, as well as we're forwarding every complaint that we get to the Niagara Wind Corporation, which also puts them on notice that they can't say that they weren't aware of it. So my recommendation, like even on this situation where the information came to council, I know it says that it's received for information purposes, but I would actually like to see council make a recommendation that these letters get forwarded to their complaint department as well. That council was aware of it and received these complaints as well.
Okay, well, that could be in the form of a motion then. Did you have other questions, Alderman Dykstra?
Well, through you, Madam Mayor, I just to kind of echo the statement that Richard's been saying, I understand what he's saying, and these are unforeseen costs that are implemented by the township. You have staff time working on these complaints, you have staff going out there, driving out there when they could be doing other valuable things. And it's not fair that the whole community has to pay for this kind of stuff. So I think it's very important that it is documented, and I'd be more than happy to make that exact motion that it is put forward to them.
So the motion to forward to the wind company then. Okay, and that's seconded by Alderman Conk. Any discussion on that motion? And that's both pieces of correspondence. All right, seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that's carried. Okay, so any further discussion on those two items? Alderman Hessels.
Madam Mayor, well, shouldn't the township be putting in a complaint too, because we are having to do extra work too, like the dust control and that? Should we also be putting in a complaint?
Again, Richard, does that fall under the kind of the purview of that committee that struck at the region, or?
Through your mayor to all of council, it is supposed to go that way. Unfortunately, the employees haven't been completely brought online yet at the region level, so we are still dealing with individual complaints on our own, each municipality. We are getting overwhelmed with permits on a regular basis, and that was one of the biggest things. It was taking a lot of our time to review documents and review plans and drawings, and going out to the site and seeing these things and actually figure out where they're putting them, then going back asking for recommendations. So it is taking a lot of our time. As far as the complaints, I don't mind looking after the complaints because it's from our constituents. The things I would rather pawn off is most of the permit stuff, because it's kind of a royal pain in times. Plus, it's working out to daily or every other day we're making a visit to the site to making sure things were put in properly, culverts, backfill, tree trimming. So it is ongoing. The unfortunate part is for some of our permits we don't actually charge a fee for. Like the occupancy permits, we don't charge a fee for that. So we have to issue the permits and go through the documents and approve them, but we don't charge a fee for it, which is something that we've talked about. Like even Rob and I talked about it a while back, but we couldn't get it in place before the road use agreement was signed or any of these things were in place. So that's the unfortunate part, but we're trying to limit the involvement of most staff. Most of the time it's myself or Ron, or I'm making phone calls directly to them without even going to the site and saying, just fix it. I'm not going out there to fix it and get it over with. So yeah, it does take a little bit of time, but that's the unfortunate part of some of it.
Okay, any further questions regarding that? All right, so we have two more to deal with. So 175, I don't know, Alderman Gilmore?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would move that we grant President McNamara's request from AMO to make the $100 donation in his efforts to resettle Syrian refugees.
Okay, do I have a seconder for that motion? Alderman Dykstra? Any discussion on that motion? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question then. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Okay, opposed. All right, so that's carried. And then we go down to 176. I don't know if everybody read that over, but I did have a discussion with them about that, and I see where they're coming from, but I also explained it's kind of a tough one. So, so did anybody want to address that one? Alderman Dykstra?
Madam Mayor, regarding correspondence item number 176, what is their intention that the $10 that they're going to collect per player that shows up is going to be submitted to the township in lieu of the I'm not clear of what she's saying here. Like she wants to give the $10 to the township. If they only have 6 people, it doesn't make up.
Right. I think what, yeah, they want to be, if they have I forget what the fee is per, what's the ice rental per? Okay. So I think they have enough people that they can get the 160, but they're worried about people not showing. So they, as you saw in her letter, she was saying that the person coordinating it would absorb that cost. So she's wondering if they hit a night where 10 people show up, can we subsidize that? Yeah, go ahead.
To continue upon that, as being part of many rec hockey leagues and beer leagues and guys getting together to play ice, we generally have a kitty and we pay into it. One person looks after it, and you usually end up making up for those nights and stealing from the committee. That's from the kitty that we've all kicked into. Because some nights you have 30 players showing up, and you've got a really good night. Then you're going to have a few nights where you only have a few. So I know there's, unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, it's great. We have many different groups using the arena, and it's not fair to be waiting for. I understand where there's getting. I know they're skeptical about getting this off the ground, but I do think that people will show up, and you have to bank for your good nights and save for the lean nights, unfortunately. So I would suggest that we. Unfortunately, I would suggest that we say no.
So is that a motion? She is teaching your daughter this year. I need a seconder for that motion. Alderman Gilmore. So So the motion is just to receive for information then? Do you think we should do that, or should we? Okay, so, or was that your motion?
Madam Mayor, are we able to suggest to her that maybe that somebody could collect the money and
Yeah,
a little pool and
I can definitely reach out to her to.
I hope they do well. I don't want them to not do it, but
Mhm.
maybe, and maybe I'm adjusting my motion, but maybe if they're really short at the end of the year, could they come back to us or something? I don't know, is it
Sorry, if they're really.
no, like, they pay on a per use basis, or are they paying for the whole season?
That I'm not, I don't know if staff, I don't know if we got that far. I think it was just a request to see, yeah. So that's okay, I can make that suggestion when we talk to her, and, because I know it was a matter of, like, she did understand, the fairness piece to it, that there are a lot of other people using the arena. Do we, Robin, there, just before we vote on this, you were gonna look into, Richard, what, the day use in the winter, was that a subsidized cost?
Your worship, the subsidized costing we have is only for the schools. We give them a cut rate for various kids programs. They're requesting prime time use at night, so that's where we have issues because I think there's 6 or 7 other men's groups doing the same thing. But we don't ask them not to pay the difference either. So, in fairness, if you're going to do for one, you should do for all. Other municipalities that may have more than one arena can probably do that. But we have one arena, so our prime time is pretty dear to us as far as the usage goes.
Okay. So I have a seconder for that, it was Alderman Gilmore. Okay, so I will call the question then on receiving for information. All those in favor, and that's carried. Okay, and I think that was it for anything we had to deal with, unless there's other things that other people would like to discuss in correspondence. All right, if not, then we will vote on the correspondence as amended. So I will call the question on that. All those in favor, and that's carried. Okay, so now we're going into bylaws.
The following bylaws be now read a first and second time this 15th day of September 2015. Bylaw number 43 of 2015, being a bylaw pursuant to the provisions of section 34 and 36 of the Planning Act, revised statutes of Ontario 1990 as amended, to amend zoning bylaw number 34 of 2014 of the Corporation of the Township of Wainfleet with respect to those lands forming part of Lot 1, Concession 2 in the Township of Wainfleet.
So I need a mover and a seconder. Alderman Dykstra, Alderman Hessels. Any discussion? All those in favor? That's carried. And now we'll go to the third and final reading.
The following bylaws be now read a third time and finally passed this 15th day of September 2015. Bylaw number 39 of 2015, being a bylaw to adopt a policy for encroachments on township-owned lands. And bylaw number 43 of 2015, being a bylaw pursuant to the provisions of section 34 and 36 of the Planning Act, revised statutes of Ontario 1990 as amended, to amend zoning bylaw number 34 of 2014 of the Corporation of the Township of Wainfleet with respect to those lands forming part of Lot 1, Concession 2 in the Township of Wainfleet.
So I need a mover and a seconder for those. Alderman Gilmore, Alderman Conk. Any discussion? Alderman Hessels.
With bylaw 43, 2015, how come we're doing the third reading on it tonight? Don't you have to waive some procedural thing to pass that one tonight?
Through Madam Mayor to Alderman Hessels, in the report, it was requested that section 15.7 be waived. So in that motion, that section of the procedural bylaw was waived to allow the third reading for a final passing tonight.
Okay, well, good call. Alderman Dykstra.
Through you, Madam Mayor, are you able to call in favor or vote on either of these two bylaws separately?
I think we can do that. Can we? You want to vote on the? You want want to vote on them separately and do possibly a recorded vote? Is that what you're, or no?
No, not necessarily recorded, but I'm
Just to be separate.
interested
Okay,
in
yeah.
voting separately.
Is that all right, since, did we get a move?
Through Madam Mayor to all of council, we do have a motion on the floor that those be read a third time and finally passed. So we have to deal with that motion first, unless Alderman Gilmore would like to amend the motion as he moved it.
It's fine with me.
So we're just kind of withdrawing it then? Okay, so now you'll read them separately, all right.
That the following bylaw be now read a third time and finally passed this 15th day of September 2015. Bylaw number 39 of 2015, being a bylaw to adopt a policy for encroachments on township-owned lands.
Okay, so I need a mover and a seconder for that one. Alderman Gilmore, Alderman Hessels, any discussion on that one? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Okay, that's carried, and now we'll read the other one for third and final reading.
That the following bylaw be now read a third time and finally passed this 15th day of September 2015. Bylaw number 43 of 2015, being a bylaw pursuant to the provisions of section 34 and 36 of the Planning Act, revised statutes of Ontario 1990 as amended, to amend zoning bylaw number 34, 2014 of the Corporation of the Township of Wainfleet with respect to those lands forming part of Lot 1, Concession 2 in the Township of Wainfleet.
Mover and a seconder for that, Alderman Dykstra and Alderman Gilmore. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that's carried. Okay, we got through that. So any notices of motion tonight? No? Okay. No proclamations. So we'll move into other business. Does anybody have any other business? I think a few people do. We'll go Alderman Dykstra, then Alderman Conk, and then Alderman Gilmore.
Through you, Madam Mayor, this is kind of for Michael. In regards to the last council meeting in your staff report about the official plan amendment, section 8.6, about removing section 8.62, I had made a motion, and I was expecting to see something about that tonight. I was just wondering about reversing that and what the steps would be in removing that, the amendment to have section 8.62 removed from our official plan.
Your Worship, through Alderman Dykstra, staff have received several pieces of correspondence from various parties on this one. I've also had discussions with members of council about this, and have, I believe there's a different direction given, which will be reflected in my staff report, and that will be coming. I was unable to make the deadline for tonight's meeting, but it will be coming for the next meeting.
So, through you, Madam Mayor, just to clarify then, it will come as another staff report with the amendment, with the section put back in, rather than us voting on it as a bylaw change.
Your Worship, through Alderman Dykstra, what we had previously was a public meeting, so we proposed the idea of doing that, and now based upon the correspondence, I'll be preparing a staff report with the necessary amendments, which will come back before council for actual approval.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's it for your other business. So Alderman Conk.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I have 3 items. First, I'm curious to know, and I think this should be directed at Richard, the funding that we received. Do we know what we're doing with it yet?
Through your mayor to Alderman Conk, are you thinking about the 150 funding, the grant that we received?
Yes.
That was, that is earmarked for the buildings at the arena.
And I did send some correspondence to Robin with regards to health forms and complaints, or just filing health information with regards to people who may be finding themselves with some health issues from turbines that are up and running. The notion being that there should be a receptacle somewhere in the township, supposedly, for this information to reside at. so that it can be kept in a safe and secure place, if people so choose to share that information with the township. So, having said all of that, are we willing to do that?
Thank you for that question. Robin did tell me that you'd had a discussion or an email exchange about this, and my first thought was to maybe put that on the region. And as you know, I am co-chair of public health. I love to remind everybody of that when I can. So I don't know if it's something, I think Robin and I kind of wondered if it was a little beyond our scope to, because I would think you'd want to track it and then maybe have some sort of report, like you're talking just storing it. So like my mind went, I probably am complicating it, but it's a very good point, and that's what we have public health for. So I wondered if, you know, they weren't particularly interested in, they've been following along, but when we've brought the concerns to them in the past, and constituents in West Lincoln particularly were kind of banging the drum in the last term about the health, possible health impacts. I remember public health saying, you know, best that you document them, but I'm just wondering if somehow we could get their assistance or collaboration on it. I don't know, maybe I'm overcomplicating it. Maybe you're talking about some secret file cabinet that nobody, and we'll open it up, you know, in 10 years and see where we're at.
Well, I do believe, I mean, this is a form that's being developed by the Ratepayers Association, and I sit on the board. And anybody that takes the form, once it's fully developed, can send it. They can give it to their doctor, they can send it to the public health department, they can send it to the Ministry of Health. But we were thinking that there should also be some sort of a repository for that information at the local level. And my first thought was, well, the township is the logical place for it to reside. If the individual chooses to send that information off to the Chief Medical Officer of Health for the region, well then, okay, but then the township also has the information. Now, what I'm unclear of is if the ratepayers want the township to collate the information. That has not become clear at this point, because we're still developing the form and hope to have it finalized for our meeting on the 30th of September. So I guess the ask at this moment is, would the township consider taking the forms in at this point? I mean, I'm not anticipating anybody's going to fill them in and submit anytime soon.
I think we need, this is way beyond anything, so I think we need to maybe do some research on that. That would be my, because it just seems it's constantly with these things, turbines, it's uncharted territory all the time, and in this instance it's the same thing, and I don't know, I'm a little leery, I don't know if it's something we want to wade into or if we can put it on a different agency, but I think it definitely needs to be documented, there's absolutely no question. So I see Robin writing copious notes, so I'd say leave it with us, and you don't have the form ready yet anyway, you're saying?
It's close.
Okay, so yeah, leave it with us, and we can see what we get with that, maybe do some research with all that extra time Robin has. Okay.
One more thing.
One more.
It's been pointed out, to me in particular, I guess, that 8.6.2, I think those are the numbers that Alderman Dexter just talked about, seem to be fairly simple to eliminate from the official plan. And I'm wondering about a few other sections that I think we either need to clean up or get rid of, and I'm wondering if that's at all possible. And I'm talking at this point 4.5.3, which is sustainability and energy conservation, and it does definitely talk about alternative renewable energy is what it talks about. I think under the objectives for that, it says to promote sustainability practices which reduce air pollutants and greenhouse gas emissions and reduce impact on the natural environment. Well, we've got one project up and running already, and obviously another solar panel project that's coming in. And even though it's not going, he says, not going to go on agricultural property, it's pretty close to some protected property, and it's in a natural environment. So those solar panels are going to impact that natural environment. So I think we either need to take a hard look at 4.5.3 and the subsections, and either do away with it or tweak them somehow so that we're not left holding the bag sometime in the future. So there's that one. And I'm going to go out on a limb and talk about 3.3.3.12, which is Lakewood. I don't know if that one is as easily removed as I think 4.5.3 might be. So perhaps, Michael, you might be able to speak to that one. This particular development is not being well received by the Lakeshore residents, and I don't know, I'm not getting a good warm and fuzzies from this, and I think we're going to have a battle on our hands if we don't do something now.
Through your worship to Alderman Conk, I'll take them step by step. 8.6.2 will be addressed as part of an upcoming staff report. 4.5.3 regarding sustainability and energy conservation is in the provincial policy statements, which we must be consistent with. So what we do is within the official plan. How we do it is up to council. So how we implement. So if there's individual projects that meet the intent of, it's up to council what actually happens with that policy, what actual projects are looked at under that. I would suggest that the Green Energy Act is something separate and distinct from the Planning Act. There's no direct connection between the two. There is an attempt by the province to promote energy conservation and sustainability in a non-green energy format, if I may call it that. That is the intent, I believe, of these sections of the policy. To remove them would be contrary to provincial direction, would be my suggestion. If we wanted to look at them to tweak them, to adjust language, I can certainly do that and report back to council if there is any wiggle room within them to revive, to consider alternative wording. But they did go through a fairly intensive public process to get them in place, and I don't take changes to them lightly, is I guess what I can say, because it is subject to provincial policy. But I can certainly take a look at them and, as I said, consider tweaks.
So can I ask one question, however? The gentleman that was our delegation this evening, 4.5.3.1 suggests that when an renewable energy generation facility is proposed, they need to hold a public information session. Does this project, his 8, fall under this? Should he be holding a public information center?
Your worship, through Alderman Conk, I believe as part of the FIT program, the Renewable Energy Approval System. I'm not totally up on that, but I do remember that with the Wainfleet Wind Energy, there was a public information session held. So I would suspect once they've made application, then they would go through and hold at least one public session like that. And if to continue, 3.3.1.12, our favorite section of the official plan. It is in there because of the OMB direction. Removing it is not something I'm comfortable with, and not something I think is possible at the moment, because it is based on the OMB, which supersedes council's direction or council's position at this point. My suggestion is that the approvals of the plan of condominium and the zoning bylaw amendment will be coming to council at a future date. I can't tell you when. The date keeps on going further into the distance. Every week I'm talking to the proponent, and once it does, council has an opportunity at that point to say yea or nay. If council chooses to say to reject it, that's entirely up to you, and I can certainly provide advice as to the next steps and what the opportunities are at that point. But I think to To remove it it's an OMB, Ontario Municipal Board decision that has been put in here specifically, so removing it I don't think is an option.
Okay, thank you, Michael. And we have Alderman Gilmore.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Earlier today, Michael and I had a meeting just to talk about some general planning things, and one of the topics that came up was a decision by the Committee of Adjustment that they granted last night. And Michael has some concerns about the decision, and after we discussed it for a period of time, decided that it would be prudent for him to make the rest of council aware of the decision and the potential ramifications of that. So I asked him to circulate some information and provide us with some background.
Through your worship to council, if I may provide some explanation to Alderman Gilmore's comments. Yesterday, the Committee of Adjustment hearing for September was held. There were 3 applications being heard, one of which was a minor variance. The minor variance was a request by the property highlighted on both maps. Both plans were provided, 11615 Burnaby Road. Request for a minor variance to permit 2 horses to be kept on the property. My planning report, which was presented, was not favorable. It recommended denial of this because it's not consistent with the minimum distance separation guidelines, or formula I should say. It's not consistent with regional policy, township official plan policy, or township zoning bylaw. And it doesn't meet any of the requirements of that. There is some potential for the use to be grandfathered, and there was discussion of that. As I said, my recommendation was to deny. The committee voted and they approved it because based on compassionate grounds, and Ms. Smith can provide additional backup if required as the Secretary Treasurer of the committee. They provided significant justification for having horses for compassionate grounds, for medical reasons, specifically that the couple, the owners, were involved in a serious car accident recently, or a few years ago, and now have used horses for therapy purposes. So that was, the committee, I believe, was swayed by that. I was as well, until I had to provide a professional opinion on that. But the issue is, from my perspective, it didn't meet the 4 tests of the minor variance under the Planning Act. There's 4 of them, it didn't meet 3. My concern is, that I expressed to Alderman Gilmore, is that 2 animal units in this case, 1 horse is equal to 1 animal unit per provincial guidelines. 1 animal unit is also equal to 150 chickens. So technically, this, it does apply to just this property, but this sets a precedent for the township. And my concern is that if someone has 300 chickens, which is 2 animal units somewhere else in a hamlet, that the same decision can be leveraged and used to their advantage in the future. So the concern overall, and I'm not providing an opinion here, but I'm just providing information to council. The decision was made last night. The notice of decision was sent out today. There's a 20-day appeal period on that. If council chooses to not appeal that decision, or council has a right to appeal the decision, is the first point. If council chooses not to appeal the decision, that's entirely your choice. The decision will be in place. I'm advising that the decision could provide opportunity for precedent and could lead to other issues of livestock, however limited, within hamlets. Whether or not council wishes to see that is a decision you'll have to make. The concern is that if my concern was I wanted to advise council of the situation, and if council wished to take action, you have 20 days. The next council meeting falls after that period. Therefore, tonight is the option from my perspective if council wishes to appeal. Thank you.
Alderman Dykstra.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I believe, Michael, and maybe you can, that the north property, the neighbor immediate to this would be 11617. I believe council just this past week received correspondence from them suggesting that they also have livestock, and I understand there's some orders against that property as well. So, are they also going to be appealing to the Committee of Adjustment for a minor variance on this property? And this property, which is also in the hamlet, the neighbor's property to this property, has substantial amount of livestock, I guess hogs in the hamlet. So, I'm just bringing this up just to put everything in perspective for the rest of council, whether everybody knows the two properties are in fact side by side.
Your worship, through Alderman Dexter, thank you for bringing that topic up. I do confirm there is a bylaw complaint against the northern neighbor. It was not subject to the minor variance application last night or yesterday, and the committee in fact struck all discussions regarding that specific application. However, I'm not looking at the specific application, I'm looking at the greater ramifications, the possible precedent this will set. So I'm not as concerned with the application because it was accepted as a minor variance based on scale and based on standard of care that the property owners exhibit, they've demonstrated. They had several letters of support, both from neighbors and from medical professionals explaining what they were doing. The only correspondence received it wasn't even negative, but was from the neighbors to the north, who have been, as I mentioned, subject to bylaw complaints. And Mr. Borman and I are following up on that because it is a zoning issue as well. The problem with zoning is it doesn't look at standard of care. It doesn't look at pride of ownership of a property. It doesn't look at scale necessarily in this case. It simply says livestock are not permitted in hamlets. So the question comes down to the minor variance from my perspective as a planner is there is I couldn't support this as the planner yesterday. I couldn't support this on technical grounds. I get the compassionate grounds that the property owners are aware of, it was approved under. I just want to make sure council's aware that this may set a precedent and that there may be other applications coming through where larger quantities of livestock, there could be 2 horses were approved in this case, one could come through for 5 or 10 or larger numbers. The scale could be larger, and it will be increasingly difficult to defend the policies of the town.
That was kind of your question though, because, so I see what you're saying about setting a precedent and your concern that it come in larger quantities, but I think that's Alderman Dyster's point. It's already happening, it's an issue on the north property, so if we decide to just let this slide tonight, will that give the property to the north a lot more leverage to say, well, wait a minute. And I just want to clarify too that the property we're talking about tonight with the 2 horses, I don't think they've had any bylaw complaints, just so everybody knows. It's just the property beside them. So, so I think that you're trying to tie it in that, and unfortunately they're side by side. And before you answer that, well, I'll let you go ahead and then I have another question.
Your worship, through Alderman Dexter and through all of council, this will not affect the proceedings against the other property. Mr. Borman, as our chief building official and bylaw enforcement officer, is proceeding with bylaw enforcement against that property to the north. So there have been several complaints received against the property to the north, none received against the property in question. I can't speak to it beyond that. All I can say is this won't affect the application to the north. They're separate and distinct things. However, there could be more bylaw complaints coming in the future that would make it somewhat more difficult to enforce.
So you're saying the people to the north, this wouldn't give them fuel for the fire, so to speak. They couldn't come and say, well, you let these guys do it, so now we wanna have at least a minimum amount of things that currently we're really not supposed to have.
Your worship, in speaking with the property owners to the north, who I am meeting, Mr. Borman and I are meeting with them on Friday to discuss whether a zoning amendment is appropriate for the property. I have the region, the NPC involved in that one as well. They have verbally demonstrated to us they intend to leave the township. They're looking for ways to get rid of their livestock, to sell their livestock, and to eventually sell their house and leave the township. If this gets approved, they may consider legal action. I don't know. I'm speculating. I can't do any more than that. It would give them a degree of opportunity.
So the property we're talking about tonight, they moved into a home that had, well, the homeowners that they purchased from for several years had horses, or a pony, I think it was, as well, and that kind of went under the radar. So when they moved in, did they think it was okay then? Like it was kind of just didn't realize and brought these two horses in? Like, I'm not familiar, I think I met these people really briefly once, but, and so now it's come out that, no, you can't really do this, and we're trying to solve it.
Your worship, if I can, in response to that, I haven't researched the property file to any extent. I think I'll still have to do that, but my understanding is that the previous owners had an issue with the township over 2 horses. That was dropped for some reason. There's no evidence that it was provided that it was ever followed through on, and the previous owners went from 2 to 4 horses or more horses at that point. They had 4 plus horses on the property, and nothing was no follow through has ever occurred. There are several people, both of these property owners, one of them contacted MPAC, and both of them took advice from their realtors that these properties were zoned agricultural and livestock were okay on them. In both cases, that's false information, and that was confirmed by myself to the individuals directly. They're both zoned residential. So I have advised both property owners that they received false information and they received it from the incorrect sources. They couldn't be justified, they couldn't be backed up. That's a decision, they made a decision to purchase the property, so we can't change that based on false information. Many other property owners or prospective purchasers wish to buy property in Wainfleet and have livestock on it. And my advice, and Mr. Borman's advice constantly is, livestock are not permitted on these properties. Most of them are smaller 5-acre or smaller lots that are throughout the township. I think mostly on the northeast corner of town, but throughout. And we advise that livestock are not a permitted use based on the zoning. If they wish to have livestock on the property, they run a risk. And the risk is that there's a written complaint received, at which point we will prosecute, we will do bylaw enforcement, which none of us want to go down, but that is the option. So they take a risk that one of the neighbors change, and the new neighbors come in and don't want that to happen, and the good neighbor policy gets tossed out the window, and they begin to bylaw enforcement at that point. So that is advised to whoever contacts us. Obviously, there are some purchasers that don't seek that advice or don't understand it, so they make decisions accordingly.
So if there wasn't, I'm sorry, I hope council, I'll try and speed this up, but so if there wasn't a complaint, what brought this to everybody's attention?
Your worship, Mr. and Mrs. Westcombe, who are the owners of the property, they approached the township, they approached me looking for permission because they heard about the bylaw complaints against their neighbors. And so they came and sought permission. There is an argument that they may be grandfathered, the livestock use of the horses may be grandfathered. I can't confirm that at the moment, but there is discussion that the livestock have been present on that property since prior to 1979. If that's the case, there is some opportunity for grandfathering. I have to look into the specifics. But they approached the township looking for a way to get permission because of the medical needs of the owners.
One more question, how big is the property?
is, your worship. .35 acres in size, approximately 1.5. And the property to the north, the one the bylaw complaint is on, it's just over 2.5.
I know this is I'm not quite sure what council's thinking about this, and it's kind of been thrown at us tonight, so I think tonight, did you have a comment? Because I was gonna say, I know that there are other places in the municipality out along the lakeshore that have horses, and so far nobody's complained, but it only takes that, house next door to change hands, and then we have a complaint on our hands. John was, not stressing to me, but just mentioning to me in light of what's going on with the neighbors, and John said there are several, residences out along that way in the residential areas that do have horses or chickens or, who knows what else. So I do see, I'm trying to process what you're saying about setting a precedent, because it could end up snowballing from there. But anyway, Alderman Conk, you had a comment or a question?
Through you, Madam Mayor, Michael, could the owners of the property who have the 2 horses, who need them for medical reasons, would they, by any stretch of the imagination, be considered pets?
Your worship, through Alderman Conk, I did explore that. Our definition within the zoning bylaw, within the official plan, within the provincial policy statement, really any of the traditional sources I could find. And horses were always considered livestock. There was nothing in any of the definitions that provided for pets. I don't believe that's something that zoning can deal with. The only differentiation we have of the zoning offers or the planning offers is whether they are, a cow, for example, is being raised to produce milk or to be a beef producer.
The reason I ask is because in Port Colborne, on Kalali Street South, there was a woman who bought a piece of property there, a fair-sized piece of property, and she brought a donkey in. And their council went back and forth, and they finally allowed her to keep the donkey, and she could keep it only until it passed away. She was not ever to replace it because it was a family pet. And I don't know how it was deemed a family pet, a donkey, I don't know, but so that's how they dealt with it. You can keep the pet until it passes, and once it's gone, you cannot replace. So that's why I was asking if these could be considered pets as opposed to the property to the north. I'm assuming when they have chickens and pigs, and they're not pets. They're being raised to either be sold or for the freezer. So so there's a bit of a difference there. I'm just thinking maybe we could kind of slide under the radar with that definition. I don't know.
Your worship, through Alderman Conk, I'm in agreement with that. I see your point very well. They've made a compelling case for the medical condition, for the fact that the horses are pets, as you say. I can find nothing to support or deny that position, and just to support or reject it. It's the same as if someone has an exotic animal in their house. There's municipalities that don't have bylaws to control if you have an alligator in your basement as a pet, as an extreme example. I don't know if we can zone for that, is the question.
I think Alderman Hessel's had a question or comment.
Well, you said there's no complaints against this guy, so I can't see why we would waive the thing unless he gets a complaint. Then that's the only time he's in problems. I do really worry about the precedents you will set if you allow this one, and then I'm pretty sure the neighbor's going to ask for the same thing. It just doesn't seem fair. But if he's got no complaints, he can keep them horses there because it's complaint driven. So I guess he's got to be on good terms with his neighbors so he don't get complaints. But to change it just because he wants it changed, and then I think we'll have to do that again later down the road. Or that's the way I feel. I want to be fair to everybody, so I would say we should disallow it.
So that would be, so So if we don't want to allow it, then we have to appeal. We have to appeal the Committee of Adjustments decision. So Alderman Hessels, are you making a motion then to appeal their decision?
I would say I'd make that motion that we appeal it.
Do we have a seconder for that motion? I'll second it. Okay, any discussion on that motion? Go ahead.
Well, like I say, he's got no complaints against him, so he don't even really need to ask for this. I know he's trying to think ahead. I don't believe that neighbor has, or this person has lived there that long, because there was issues there years ago, and like I said, I can't remember how it got solved either. I know I was on council. I'm not sure how it got solved. I thought that time too he couldn't have him there, but, so, I don't know. He has only been there for a few years. He should have known when he came there that he's in a hamlet and that things are allowed. It's just like our notification clause. At least that's a good transparent thing. People see it on their, depends which way we go, they could see it on title before. So here, these people too, they know when they came there, that's a hamlet, and they should know that there are no livestock permitted. Whether they get away with it or not, that's up to the neighbors, I think. So that's why my reason for appealing it is because of that.
Okay. I was gonna say I have an issue with the size of the property, and also the fact we keep talking about the compassionate grounds, but we really don't know. Like it probably would have helped if we could hear from these people as well. And I'm wondering with the appeal, I don't think we've ever done this before. I don't think I've ever been part of this. So would we then, appealing this, get a chance to, would they appeal to us then, like they did to the Committee of Adjustment? Would it be that sort of a process?
Your Worship, in response, I'm sure that Sarah can help on this one as well as the clerk. Once the appeal is made to the OMB, the decision is taken out of the township's hands, away from council, and it goes to the board. So the recommendation might be at that point, I would suggest that we try for mediation at that point, rather than going to a full hearing. So it would matter which process is followed, rather than a full hearing, to discuss it with the applicant, or with the property owners, and try to come to some resolution.
Alderman Dijkstra?
Through you, Madam Mayor, in regards to the motion that's on the table, I'm not suggesting, but I'm just wondering if we worded it in such a way that council wishes to uphold or appeal that decision in light of what's going on beside them in the neighborhood. Like, could we sort of say, you know, put it on hold, kind of, there's other, because I think these two matters, just a little bird, I think these two matters are connected.
Your Worship, in terms of the appeal letter has to be submitted by the township. It would include rationale, and the rationale would be what Alderman Dijkstra is talking about with regards to other bylaw complaints.
Okay, and so then you would work toward remediation as opposed to a full board hearing?
Your Worship, yes, in order, A, to keep costs down, and B, because it's a matter that really doesn't need to go to a full hearing, but it would be, we work with our legal counsel to resolve this in as fast and as simple way as possible.
I don't love spending money on these things, especially, I know we put a Committee of Adjustment in place to make these decisions, but I know council hears complaints from the community on a regular basis as well, but I hear them a lot more, and I just see this opening up, I don't want to use the term floodgates, but this does concern me, especially the size of that property, and I could see this being used against us in the future, because we have, you know, certain people who have smaller properties and they have a cat and a dog and that's it, and then you have people coming in who think, well, it's Wainfleet, so I should be able to have, you know, this animal or that animal and do these things, and we're up against this all the time, and it uses a lot of staff resources. I know Michael and John spend a lot of time at the other property. I know John is always, you know, trying to kind of solve these issues, and it's our bylaw department it's not growing, but I can see it will be growing, because I know they have a lot of complaints and things they're dealing with, and that's why this concerns me. So if we could, like you said, remediation, you know, that I think would be the better way. So any other questions or comments? Alderman Conk.
Through you, Madam Mayor. I'm just the one map, and a comment that was made about them, this property owner, knowing that they went into a hamlet. Did they? Do we have any signs that indicate where the boundaries of the hamlet actually are?
Your worship, Alderman Khan, no, we don't. There are, I should say, let me backtrack for a second. I believe there are signs saying welcome to Burnaby. I'm not sure exactly where they are. I would note as well that the boundary that I provided on the map for council is a draft boundary. It's subject to appeal by the OMB still, but I took the position with the Committee of Adjustment yesterday on post-appeal position because it's what will be, and there's no, I can't see either of these properties, and the committee asked me yesterday, I can't see either of these properties being removed from the hamlet area. At issue here for both properties, if I may, is that they contacted MPAC, and MPAC for, Robin can confirm this, but MPAC for use identified them both as agricultural rather than residential, and people took that to be zoning, which is not factual. That's part of the issue. So they believed, both parties have identified to me, they believed they were buying in agricultural properties where they had residential uses, and therefore were allowed to have, by extension, allowed to have livestock despite the zoning.
Okay, so any further questions or comments from Council? Alderman Gilmore.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just one more thing, Michael, could you just confirm the Regent's position on this as well for us?
Your worship, through Alderman Gilmore, the region actually does not comment officially on minor variances. That's per our memorandum of understanding. However, I did, because of the nature of the application, I did contact the region's development services, and Pat Bignello, who's the manager, chatted with me. He said if I had gone through, if I had recommended, or if they had pursued a zoning bylaw amendment for this, which was considered, then the region would not have supported that amendment because it was livestock in the hamlet area. And if council had approved the zoning bylaw amendment, then the region may have appealed it themselves.
Alderman Hassels.
I think we have rules there for the farming community, and we have spots where you can farm, and I think we have rules for the people in the hamlets. So I really think we should be following those. There's different places in Wainfleet to do different things, and I'm afraid, again, you start with this, it is going to snowball. So.
Okay, so any other questions or comments from council? All right, so I will call the question on Alderman Hessel's motion to appeal. All those in favor? And that's carried. All righty then. Any other business? I thought this was going to be a short meeting. Alderman Hessels, you're the only one. What a lovely wedding a couple weeks ago.
We discussed washrooms, or purchasing this washroom facility, and I think there's money you have to spend by a certain time, and we haven't heard back. So I'm wondering where we're going with that.
Do either of you wish to comment? Wow, way to blindside you, right? Way to go, Ted.
Through to Alderman Hessels, this was obviously subject to regional funding, a regional funding request that was granted. The way I remember council making a decision previously was that the fate of the washroom was left undecided, from what I understand. I can be correct on that, and council agreed to move ahead with the other sections that are covered by regional funding. So the purchase of the washroom has not been finalized, and Richard and I were chatting a while back as to how we would when and how we would approach council to make a decision on that.
Well, I thought they were coming back with prices to council again. That's kind of what I was left to believe that time. You're going to come back to council with prices of washroom, and then we would decide if we would go for it or not.
To your worship, to Alderman Hessels, yeah, we did look into several options of pricing as well. the initial request when it went out was, I think we had placed 20,000, I think, was the price tag we originally got. And I believe I can get one in a similar fashion, a commercial brand, for about 10,000. So we can get them cheaper, but the actual purchase at this point hasn't been brought forth to council, so it will be coming forth on a future report.
Okay, so if that's it for other business, then we will move on to the bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council.
Bylaw number 44 of 2015, being a bylaw to adopt, ratify, and confirm the actions of the council at its regular meeting held on the 15th day of September 2015, be read at the first, second, and third time and finally passed this 15th day of September 2015.
I need a mover and a seconder. Alderman Gilmore, Alderman Conk, all those in favor? Carried. A motion to adjourn. Alderman Conk, Alderman Hessels, all those in favor? And that's carried.